Welcome, everyone. Thank you for setting aside some time today to join us to talk about what we're playfully calling smart tasks. We'll see if that sticks. Really, within that are our AI tasks and code tasks. So today, myself, Michael D'Souza, I'm VP of Product and Growth. Joining me today is Blake Bailey, Director of Customer Success, Ellie Mahoney, our product manager, and one of our very special partners from Improv, Kai De Silva. So let's jump right in. All right, so the challenge, third-party automation is holding you back. It's a pretty provocative title. Maybe it's not holding you back, maybe it's actually facilitating a lot, but it does come with some trade-offs, as we all know. And I think one of the things that we've heard a lot about from our customers, and where it really did inspire us to start investing more in this area and bringing out these features, is the fragmented logic. So as we're talking about maybe a third-party integrator and having some of the workflow and what's having happen and the exchange of data living outside of Process Street, sure, it gets you what you need and it helps you advance the workflow, but it does add a bit of complexity where you're trying to manage different tools all working together. So we wanted, at least for those that are interested and that have that kind of use case, to be able to bring that into Process Street. And so we're doing that in two ways, one with code tasks and the other with AI tasks. Of course, there are any number of other complexities, adding third-party integrators or automation to your tool, like I have here, slower performance, and it's another tool to pay for. So in the end of the day, especially lately, saving money is key for most businesses, and so we wanted to make sure that we're supporting our customers' goals as that makes sense. What are we going to do about it? We have our AI tasks, we have our code tasks. So no more bloated chains of tools, logic that lives inside the workflow. It's fast, it's scalable, it's transparent, and it works with your data, your rules, right? So AI tasks, it's been out for a little bit now. A lot of you have been using it, some really heavily. So it's a great way to bring automation in the form of AI into your workflow to help it advance tasks, getting information together. Lots of great use cases we're seeing develop from our customers. And most recently, we have now code tasks, which is JavaScript, which can do any number of things with inside of Process Street tasks, which again helps us deliver that consistent result as we move forward with our customers' objectives through our workflows. Within AI tasks, it core to what we do, automating that repetitive work, accelerates workflows. So there are certain any number of use cases where AI can just do a better, faster job and not necessarily have to burden a human being with executing that task, like doing summaries or writing different copy, extracting details from documents and what have you, but also boosting accuracy and that speed, smarter decisions. So we've seen people using AI tasks to do routing, to do categorization, weighting, things like that that are helping, again, move things along in a much more consistent way without as much human capital to invest in executing that workflow. But as we talk about that, we are very much committed to this idea of human centricity. So it's still where humans need to be involved in anything that has to do with AI in our product. We want to make sure that we're supporting relationship between that technology and the workforce, so that we're getting that value add, that force multiplier. And so as we've built features for our product, AI tasks, we're really cognizant of what that relationship needs to be, and making sure that there's opportunities for transparency with how AI is working, and making sure that our human beings on the participating in the workflow have an opportunity to see that result, approve it, edit it, what have you, but really, again, moving things along faster. So we've got a number of tips and best practices in the slide deck. I'm not going to go over all of them. We're going to send this out after the webinar, so everybody will get a copy. But really quick, just the highlights. Be clear and specific in your prompts. you want to talk as in a prompt within AI tasks as you set it up, as if you're talking to another human being, but that human being's very literal, right? So if you tend to phrase your prompts that way, you get a much better result. With anything you do, whether it's the workflow, AI tasks, code tasks, always test before you put things into production. We've got some great features in there that allow for the continuous integration or continuous iteration and development of these features in workflows. Use input fields to personalize output. So of course, the AI task can do a bunch. It does a lot more if you're using variables and from elsewhere in the workflow and pulling that data in and then having it actually consider that as part of additional context for whatever that task is going to be. We'll see some examples of that in a moment. And use output mapping thoughtfully. So where's the result going to go? Are we going to put an approval task on what comes out of the AI task itself, the result? Are we going to parse that out into several different tasks? So something to consider as you begin using the feature. Always review for accuracy, iterate and evolve. This is great for practice for no matter what you're doing for development. With AI task 2, we suggest like keeping a log of what's working and in what context it's working, so that you can apply those same sort of approaches and principles to other AI tasks as you begin to use that more throughout your workflows. Combined with conditional logic is a really powerful one. Like I said earlier, using AI tasks to establish routing based on, it could be based on the sentiment of an email, right? As an example, it's able to interpret that and then put a value into a field that could then trigger conditional logic. And don't overload tasks and train AI with examples. And train AI here, it doesn't mean any of the LLM. It means if you're looking for a result, give it an example of the result. And you get a much, much tighter and repeatable output if you're giving it the example to follow. And that brings me to code tasks. So we're going to talk about these just real quick, and then we'll move into some demos so that we have plenty of time to look at those, as well as answer your questions. So with code tasks, it's custom locking integrations. It's allowing you to bring more of that automation into the product itself as a task, whether it's API calls or doing calculations. We've seen some really pretty novel use cases. What's great with this is you do not have to be somebody who is a developer. You don't have to be all that familiar with JavaScript. It's actually one of the things that led us to make the decision to bring this into the product was with the ubiquitous sort of rollout of AI, being able to bring that into our product and have it actually writing the code for you means that, this is a feature that we can bring to all of our users and still have it be, no code or low code, even though what's actually happening is literally writing the code. Because we have AI there helping guide you, then anybody can take advantage of this, which is really great. And that allows you all to have reusable scripts, moving them between workflows. And those can be very, like I said here, very dynamic as it adapts to different conditions and context and information, and that gets processed with JavaScript. So a couple of things to think about with code tasks: keep it fast and light. There is a ceiling, a 5-second limit, which doesn't sound like much, but it actually allows for a lot to get done. This is something that, as we're in our big state, we're playing with, and it's something that we can adjust over time. So as we're getting feedback and kind of understanding some more of the use cases, that's something we'll likely revisit. Looking for, if you're going to be interacting with APIs, simple authentication, OAuth flows, for example, might not work or would not work in this case, but there are ways to kind of work around that. Gets a little bit more complex. Then think about, should I be using a code task or webhooks, which have been a part of our product for some time, right? So there's, a decision point there. And if something you're not familiar with, again, lean on AI, ask questions. ChatGPT, whatever, has been a great sort of assistant for using this. One thing that I recommend is literally just taking our help doc articles on code tasks and just feeding it in and then beginning the conversation from there. It could kind of jump you ahead. And it's also going to pick up on things like avoiding the dependencies, like stick with Node.js 22 features. That's what we have. Again, this is an early beta, so we're thinking about adding some additional libraries, but for right now, there aren't. It's not an option to add those in. Think stateless. So that all that means is that every API call, it's going to be a refresh after that. So it's not going to remember and essentially the transaction history there. Test before publishing, always build incrementally, test often, and plan for errors. So wrap API calls with logic that can catch blocks, that can report out those errors, give you a log of what failed and why. And these aren't things you need to know how to do. It's just something that you can ask of the AI when it's writing the code, and can add that in. And that was super fast because I want to make sure we're getting plenty of time for demos, and I'm going to let Blake take it from there.
Here we are. So this is the part I think you've all been waiting for, getting to actually see some of the examples that our team has put together. And a lot of these examples actually come directly from customer requests. So, different customers, as we have, sort of slowly been trickling this out, in our one-on-one conversations with people, and they have come back to us with, specific requests, specific things they're thinking of. We've been able to work with them to design a lot of these, right? And so I wanted to show them off as a great way to show off not only some members of our team, but of course, some of these examples. Plenty more to come. As you are watching these, I highly recommend thinking about, how you can apply these in your world. And of course, think of your own ways where things might be useful. All right, let's go ahead and start here. First off, of course, you already know this person. It's Ellie. It's the person who you just heard at the beginning of this. And so what she's going to go through here is, well, let's go ahead and just take a look at it. We'll just see.
Okay, so let's move on to an example of our customer onboarding workflow. And in this case, we're onboarding a customer from Spain. Our sales team have already kicked off this process by running it when a deal is completed in Salesforce. So we've already captured their opportunity details, their account details. And now it's time just to double check these details here and select the primary language for this particular customer. So this workflow is actually going to show how we utilize a couple of different AI tasks. Two of them are going to do translation, and one of them is actually going to write the email before we actually translate it. So we'll just imagine that I'm my manager, Janelle. I'm going to approve all of those steps. And you'll see the first task there is to write the email and pop that into a long text field. There we go. Okay, so you'll notice this isn't in Spanish at the moment. So we've got Sylvia's name coming through as a variable. We've got their company name, sorry. And then it's signing off from me from Callister Inc. Okay, so what we want to do next is to be able to create this customized Spanish email and a welcome introductory message that we can then pass through to DocuSign. And you'll see here this has come back to me to complete. I'm going to be sending the contract today, and then you'll just see in the background that has translated the message. Okay, so the reason that we've got two separate pieces here is that inside of DocuSign, you'll see we've got a custom message heading, and then we've got the custom message body. And then this is where the customer will actually sign the contract. Okay. So we can go ahead and complete that task and then announce to our team that the customer has been onboarded, complete the task, and that completes the workflow. So behind the scenes, if I go into the editor, I'll just show you how we have this set up. So the account manager's name here, you'll see that's used as the input of an AI task. And then here is the AI task itself. So I've actually used a create from scratch selection in the drop down here, and then I've used basically just written in some instructions. I've used variables using the magic wand that I know are within the form fields here, and I've actually created a signature because I want the email widget to show that as well. And then the output there is basically the DocuSign email body. and then this comes into this field here. So if we weren't using the AI task, we could just use the default variables, the default settings here with variables instead. But in this case, we're actually going to pass that through the translation task. And this is the first one, which translates the email header into Spanish. You'll see primary language and email header. And then the email body, we're doing that separately as well, again, because DocuSign requires those two pieces to be separated. And then these are the translation outputs. So the header and the email body pop in here. And then we actually use those in a snippet. So snippets are a little form field that you can use down here in native automations with Process Street. So basically, we're going to take the content of this when it's generated and use that variable to pass through to the header. And then we're going to use the second one, the email body here, and pass that through into the email body. Okay, so that's how it works. And then we've got the announcement for onboarding as well. That's it. Go on to the next example.
Alrighty. So obviously there you just saw how Ellie used the AI tasks specifically. So anyways, we will include the video, this video itself, the webinar recording, and the deck as well. And more to come actually beyond that as well. Let's go ahead and take a look at the next example. Actually, before I do that though, what I did want to say was with any of these examples, keep in mind that, just because what you are doing, maybe it is a little bit different. Maybe it's not a customer onboarding. Maybe it's employee onboarding, right? Maybe it's not translating language. Maybe it's more so trying to, make it more friendly, change the tone, those sorts of things. That's an example of stuff that AI tasks can do really well as extracting information and those sorts of things. All right, let's move forward. This here, so Denise is on our partnerships team. She actually was originally, many of you, in fact, maybe have even spoken to her through support because she was originally on our support team. And as every team does here, for example, what happened with Michael, what he did with us with Ellie, is that they steal all of our people from customer success because we hire all the best people. And everyone else takes them. So just putting that out there publicly for everyone to know. And so Denise has been taken up as partnerships. Of course, I'm just kidding. We're very happy for her and also happy for Ellie, even though we miss her. So anyways, here we go. So as you can see here, this is going to trigger a purchasing workflow. It's going to use an AI task and also run some code tasks to run some calculations. So this is some pretty interesting stuff, a way to handle a lot of logic inside of your workflows. Again, don't just think about this in just the example that she's providing. Think about this just in terms of the functionality, right? And the sorts of things that are happening and how that might apply to your own use cases.
Hi there. So I have a workflow set up so that when an order is made via email, it will automatically run a workflow for this workflow. I have a variable set up so that it can pass the information from the email into here. And then eventually an AI task can process and then give me a summary of that order. And eventually the code task will be able to help out with the math and then spit out the information over here so it can give me the subtotal, the tax amount, and the total cost. First, I'll show you how it's done, and then eventually I'll show you how you can set it up. So the first step to do this would be to send an email to the email that is provided when you set up the send via email feature. I'll show you in a bit how that looks like. And then I'm just going to add, I want to purchase 22 notebooks, please. I'll send the email, and then eventually that is going to do a run. So while I send it, I'm going to just pause it a little bit, and then I'll circle back. Perfect. So the email was sent and it ran this workflow. Now on this first task, the variables passed over the info, the name, the email, and the description. Then here in the middle, I have the AI task so that it can pass over the summary of the order. So basically just the product and the quantity that it took from the email description. And then eventually I have the code task in which the code task will help out to do like all the math. So here we have the subtotal. Then here we have the tax amount, which I added the percentage on the code task. And then here would be the total cost. So this can come in handy for any kind of purchase or any kind of calculation that you would like to do. Now to do it kind of like the same way that I have it, you're going to edit your workflow. And if you would like for this to be triggered by an email, you're going to add a task with the form field that matches what the email would normally have in the description. You're going to click over here and then you're going to click on email. And when you go to email, you're going to click on enable run via email. So this would be the email that has to be getting or has to be receiving those emails in order for it to work. So the orders basically have to be sent to this email address specifically. And then once you have the form fields added, you're going to click on the three dots over here. You're going to click on settings, and you're going to notice that you're going to see the options of the email. So basically here, over here, sorry, you're going to go to other, and then you're going to select the variables that match your form field. So it would be like the email, the name, the subject if you want, and then the email body. Once you have all of this, you're going to click on add AI task, and then you're going to select parsing. Parsing is going to help us pass over information from the summary into the order. This is just so it can be a little bit more like shorter or just faster to process the information for the code task. Here, I just have the parsing to locate the quantity and then locate the product. And then you also have to add another task that have the form field so that it passes the information that it locates into here. And then once you have that set up, you're going to click on code task, which is going to add this other one. You're going to select math formula. And then here, it's probably going to give you more options. In my scenario, I did it like this. So it would be the product cost, in my scenario, $30 each. And then the quantity, I took the variable of the quantity form so that it can calculate it based on what the email had. And then you can also add the tax rate. In my scenario, I just added 20. And then over here at the bottom, you're going to also add form fields so that it can match each one. In my scenario being subtotal, tax amount, and total cost. If there's any other quantities that you want to add to this, then this is where you would do it. And then over here on the final task, this is the one that are matching these last things. And yeah, that'll be it. Let me know if you have any questions. Thank you.
So, obviously there, lots of different interesting ways that you can process any sort of logic there, obviously running sorts of different types of functions. The AI task there is obviously able to extract information from there. And then additionally, after that point, of course, you're actually running just a pretty much a standard calculation that's going to be a lot more predictable in terms of its output. And so, other examples that I've seen that have used stuff like this are things like grading. So actually, like, for example, you maybe for your employees or for students, you are running a course and they're filling things out as a part of that workflow. And from there, you're able to use AI tasks and then code tasks to extract out the information and then even, provide a score and then calculate that score all together to provide, a final score. And you could do that all automatically. So that way, somebody could basically fill it out and then, you get an output immediately rather than having to wait on you to do it. Right. So just an example of how you could use that other ways. All right. So next, what I'm going to do here is I would like to introduce Kai De Silva. So he is joining us here today. So he is a process automation consultant with one of our partners, Improvisations, also known as Improv. And so Improv partners with Process Street to enable scalable growth through automation and AI-powered workflows. So they do some really, really awesome stuff. They actually started off originally just as one of our customers. I've gotten to work with them quite a lot over the years. They're pretty amazing. And of course, just through what they've been doing, they've been able to become partners. So also, if you're watching this and you work with businesses, you have clients of your own, there's a good opportunity there for you to become a Process Street partner as well, for reselling, for helping your customers get up and running, and all those sorts of things. And of course, if you are a Process Street customer or thinking to be one, I highly recommend working with Kai and the team at Improvisations. All right, Kai, if you'd like to speak a little bit here.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Blake. We actually started off as customers, like Blake said, and I really just got super deep into it and became a consultant. So I've been doing this for over 2 years now, helping clients implement their processes and automations. We don't like to just slam them in. We like to take you from where you are here to where you want to be there in a strategic way. And I've got a little bit more information about that on the website. Once you guys get this deck, you can click around and get in there. But on the next slide, I've got my demo. I actually have on the left side there, I've got a real life working automation that does the same thing as these 3 code tasks in my demo. So it's taking external data and basically filtering it. So I've got a data set synced to, in this example, a SharePoint list. And then I've got another SharePoint list with the products. So it's clients and products, and you choose a client, and then you choose which product the client has. But I've got that more in the demo. So I'm going to be demoing this set of code tasks that I just built. And I'm going to be essentially filtering dropdowns that are synced to external data sources. What I mean by that is, say you have one dropdown and you have a list of clients, and you have another dropdown and a list of products. You might want only the products related to your choice in that client dropdown to show up in the second product dropdown. So I'm going to show a pretty cool way to do that within Process Tree. So code tasks are a new way to essentially build integrations and run code from within Process Tree without having to use some middleware like Power Automate or Zapier, which is how I've most commonly done this kind of thing. So I've built it in Power Automate. I've built this in Zapier using various external data sources, whether it's a Zapier table, a Dataverse table, or something in a CRM like Salesforce or HubSpot. But now we can do that with code tasks. So let me show you how I've done it. The first code task, I've got 3 of them. The first is fetching all of the record IDs from the products data set. And then I'm deleting all of those records because we only want the ones related to the client we've chosen to show up. And then I'm populating it with the filtered product data. And I can go over to the data sets here to show you. So I've got a list of products and then a synced list of clients. So let's say this is my data set of all of my clients. So these are all my clients, and then they have a respective ID in that external data source. But this is really all we need. We needed the name and the ID. And then you have your list of products in the same way. You just need the name and the ID. So if we go ahead and go over here and run my workflow, so let's run this guy. All right, here we go. We're running the workflow. It's going to populate the name with variables and assign it to me. So we'll go ahead and run this. And now I've just got an overview with that same screen you were seeing before. And then just kind of all of my little URLs that I'm using in these quick links that are taking me to whatever pieces, basically from anywhere in the workflow that I need to go. So we've got the SharePoint databases. They're just SharePoint lists, and then the Process Tree data sets. So I can click any of these and take me anywhere. If I click a client SharePoint list, it's going to take me directly to this the SharePoint list here. And it's literally the same. It's synced to the data set. And then we've obviously got the products database. It has a little more information in it. And it's basically the title of the product, that ID, and then a relation to that client database. So let's say it's like Process Tree, Amazon and Google out of my clients have Process Tree, and so on. And then these are the IDs from those clients that are pulled over. So essentially what we're doing is going in here and being like, okay, well, which client is this process going to be running for? And let's just select Apple, right? Okay, cool. We complete this, and then my 3 code tasks will run. And what they're doing is clearing out that data set and then refilling it with the data that I want it to, which is basically just the products related to Apple, right? And if I refresh, because I have to refresh for the links drop down to update, this should only show Apple's related products. So if we go over UKG, Process AI, Strategy Enablement, if we go to this products list, Apple should show up in all of those, UKG, Process AI, and Strategy Enablement. Cool. Now all I have to do is select one of these and move on with the process. But basically, that's what's going on. So if we come in here into the workflow editor, you can see the 3 separate code tasks. This first one is grabbing all of the record IDs from that product's data set. And we're just using the Process Tree API to do so. The second one is coming through and deleting each of those from the array that was outputted here. So we've got the record ID array, and I think that's just outputted as a comma separated value list. So essentially this is getting rid of all of those. So it's clearing out your second drop downs options. And then this last code task is using Graph API to grab each of these records from the SharePoint list. And then it's using a Process Tree webhook on the data set to push that new data in. And once that's all done, then it comes to this last task and fills out the product name links dropdown. And that's it.
All right. Awesome. Thanks, Kai. The recording of Kai. Kai in the
Yeah.
past, if you will.
No, yeah, basically the one thing that I wish that I demoed in there was that if you were to go back and choose a different client, it would essentially refill, like repopulate that second linked drop down there with the products. So like if I went back and switched to Microsoft and then to the products drop down, it would have updated, right? It's a dynamically creating that second drop down for you. No, it's a little more advanced, but I think it actually applies to a lot of people because you've got a lot of data externally for most of the time, and like I said, in a CRM or SharePoint or something like that. So
Oh yeah, or just for example, Jira Service Management. Just randomly pulling that out there. Definitely not the next example. Also, I have to apologize. This next guy sucks. He's the worst. Yep, there we go. Hello, this is Blake Bailey from Process Street. Today I want to show you how we can sync Jira Service Management with Process Street seamlessly using Process Street's code tasks. All right, let's begin. So in this example, we are submitting a corporate vehicle reservation request. Example here, of course, is that we want to reserve a vehicle for our travels. But of course, it's really important to know, are those vehicles even available for us to reserve? Well, we actually manage all of that inside of Jira Service Management right here. As you can see at the moment, it looks like all three are available, all three vehicles that is. But let's go ahead and update that. So instead, we're going to say vehicle 1, that's not available anymore. Go ahead and set that to false. And vehicle, which one is this? Vehicle 2 will also be false, in which case it won't be available. Let's go ahead and refresh this just so you can see that now that's updated, and all we should see is that vehicle 3 is the one that's available. Now, if we go here to Process Street and we see this data set, we go to available vehicles, it appears like all of them are available. Well, as we all know, based off of what we see in Jira Service Management, only vehicle 3 is actually available. So in this case, we should only be able to request vehicle 3 and not vehicles 1 and 2. All right, so inside of the request, we're going to make use of what's called a code task. So code tasks allow us to basically write code to do really cool things like syncing Jira Service Management with our data sets inside of Process Street seamlessly. So in this case, I've selected my manager as Cameron. And we're going to go ahead and initiate this request. As we do that, you'll see in the back end, we've got a code task running. And once we've done that, we can actually view this log if you like. We've just gone ahead and put in a whole bunch of data. We've pulled a bunch of stuff from Jira Service Management. We've parsed that data. And as you can see here, we've gone ahead and pulled whether or not which ones are available. We've fetched the current records. And as you can see here, they've updated the records, as you can see, to update the availability. Now, from there, we can go ahead to this refresh tab task. This is important just to make sure that all the fields in here are pulling from the latest set of data. And finally, once we click on that and we go to select our available vehicle, you'll see the only one available is vehicle 3. If you like, we can also come back in here. And let's just say that vehicle 2 has now become available as well. If we do that, we can click true. We'll go back into the process. So again, we'll initiate the request. It'll run that code task again. We'll go ahead here to refresh the tab one more time. That's just a link back to this task. Click on that. Then as you can see here, now vehicle 2 and vehicle 3 are available, just like you saw inside of Jira Service Management. If we go back here and we refresh, you'll also see inside of this data set that vehicles 2 and 3 are the only ones that are available out of all the vehicles, which was also updated. As you can see, vehicle 1 is now false. And so this way we're able to track exactly which vehicles are or are not available. Additional things that we can do, we can actually also search for new vehicles that may be listed inside of our assets here and automatically add them to the data sets if it finds a record that doesn't match. You can also remove a record if maybe it's been removed from Jira. Those are additional things that we can do to this code if you choose, but just to start, let's keep it simple. And this is how we go ahead and request the vehicle for our corporate travel. Yep. So obviously there I used Jira Service Management as the tool that I was syncing data between, but keep in mind that could be anything, right? It doesn't have to be Jira Service Management. This was actually for one of our customers who actually is also on this call right now. She has already pointed it out. But just to prove that this is a real world example. But also, again, it doesn't have to just be Jira. It could be really anything. It could be Salesforce, could be HubSpot, could be Airtable, whatever it is that you use. If that tool has an API and or just has some way of connecting outside of itself, it isn't just locked down, then you can sync that with your process tree data sets using this same code task. And so really pretty straightforward. Again, it's just pulling the data from Jira Service Management, pulling the data from our data sets, and then basically using a ID field there to just cross-reference the two, match them up, and then update the availability inside of the data set, which then, of course, updates the dropdown that you saw linked to that data set inside of the workflow itself. And that way it is basically a real-time, just right there on demand syncing functionality with any tool that you like. And of course, this example is Jira Service Management. Here, this is Brenda. So she is a member of our support team. For those of you that are in the Philippines, on that side of the world, just sort of in APAC, basically, you are likely mostly talking to Brenda because she is the person who is primarily managing those clients and also managing support at those times. So that's probably who you've talked to. Brenda's incredible. She does a lot of our operations here. And she did a really, really cool example here for basically handling things like looping.
Hi there, in this video I'll show you how you can use code tasks to update form fields and to update tasks by making API calls. Now in this particular scenario, the customer wanted to create a looping behavior where, depending on the number indicated in the process, for example the number of times they want to loop, this action task will keep refreshing and the user can keep reusing the task to input information, and whatever information that is critical to retain will then be compiled as a summary. So let me just quickly show you how this works, and then I'll show you all the magic in the editor. So in my first code task, I'm basically extracting the workflow run ID, all right, because that will be very important when you're running the subsequent code task when they're making API calls. So in this particular scenario, I do have fields that are showing, even though I've indicated they're hidden, just to show you what's basically happening. So here, depending on the version, I do have different subtasks appearing depending on what is needed. So in this case, I'll just choose, for example, version B. I'm going to loop this 3 times and then complete this task. So this action task is going to be the looping task. So here I might go through the subtasks once and I will input the first website, second website, complete that off. The 2 code tasks will now run. And on this particular task, you can see that my first website is now added to the summary. Now I can click on this to redirect me back to the original task. It will kind of force refresh the page as well. And you can see that the action task has now reset by the code task. So all the subtasks has now been unchecked. All the website fields are now cleared. So I'm just going to run this the second time as well. And before I hit enter, I just want to quickly show you that I do have a loop number here as well, which will be used in conditional logic, and you'll see it shortly. So I'm just going to complete this, and again, the code task will run. And if we move to the summary task, you can see that the websites are now expanded. So now there are 2 websites instead of just 1. And if you have a look at the action task, they're also cleared out as well. Now, if you have a look at the version, we're now at loop number 2. All right, so let's just click on this again to give this page a quick refresh. And now we're down to the 3rd loop. So I'm just going to fill up the final website. And when we complete this, click on the summary, you'll see 3 websites in the list. You'll also see that the action task is now gone because I do have a conditional logic to check that if this loop matches the number of times the loop, it will return last. And obviously if last exists in this field, it will hide the action task to prevent the user from looping even more when there's only a requirement of 3. Right, and that's basically it. Let me quickly show you how it looks like on the editor. All right, now we're going to look into the code task for the reset form fields. Now this might look a bit scary because I do have quite a number of form fields to actually reset, which is why the list is so long. So you can see in my input data. Now let me run through what are some of the important form fields. So we definitely need the workflow run ID. So this will be from the first code task here. We'll need the API key. For the rest of them with the ID, those are basically our form field IDs, because when we're making the API call, we do need to identify the form field ID. So if you're not familiar with the requirement, you can have a look at our API document here. So when we're making an update to form fields, the workflow run will be required and the ID will also be required. Right? So once you have that list of form fields that you need to update, so in this case I have quite a number of them, I also have summary and website value here. Now the reason why I have extra form fields is because what I'm basically doing is in the code itself, I'm going to extract my current website value, which is going to be here, and I'm going to join it with my existing summary value. Sorry, when I say website value, it should be here, website value, and I'm going to join it with the summary. So it means if I already have a website on this summary, I want to make sure that the new website is being added to the existing list, not replace it. So there will be some sort of like format to make sure that I'm pulling the current summary value and then I'm adding the new value before I'm actually updating the value form field again. Okay, and then there's also the loop as well. So I just wanted, because I wanted to make sure that the user does not exceed the required number of loop, so I have the update for the loop value as well as the indication of the last loop. And in order to identify if this is a last loop, I need to also know what is the number of loop that is required. All right, so it really depends on what you need. Okay, you also notice that I have fallback value here for summary and loop value. Now the reason for that is because in the summary, if there's no action task yet, technically these two fields will be empty. So that's why I make sure that the fallback value will return as empty. And for loop value as well, if it's on the first loop, which means we're still on loop 0, we haven't completed loop 1, I want to make sure that the fallback is returning as 0. Then it will increase to 1, from 0 to 1. Okay, now let's have a look at the code here. Okay, so because we do have quite a number of data here, you just need to make sure you're not missing out any data here. So we have a lot of input data here. All right, I'm not going to go through too much into details. What you'll see here, this is the part where we're going to pull the existing summary value and join it with the new website value. Okay, so that will make sure that the new or the updated summary value will always be containing the existing and the new data. All right, and then this part here is basically where the loop will happen. So it's basically just checking the loop and then make sure it's always +1, and it will always return the +1 value. And it will also indicate if this is the last loop, so it will check if the updated loop value is equal to the times loop. If it is, it should return as last. All right, and then this is the part where we will run the post API call, and this is where the form field update will happen. So if you have a look into the format here, there are a few options depending on what you're updating. Now in this case, we're actually updating multiple values, so we're actually using this particular format. All right, but in the code itself, you notice because I'm clearing the data, I don't actually need to put any value, so my value is actually going to be empty. So it's just 2 square brackets to indicate that we're actually clearing it. All right, so you can see the subtask A, B, C is being cleared out here. We're also going to clear the website 1 and 2 as well. So you can see there's an empty value here. And then for the summary, we're going to update it with the updated summary value, which is on the top of the code. We're also going to update the loop, and also if it is the last loop, it should also update that it is the last loop. All right, and that's basically it for the reset code task. Okay. There's also the reset of the task as well, because when we complete the task, we actually want to uncheck the task. So in this case, we're going to be using the API call for update task. Specifically, we're going to update it to not completed. Right. So here we'll need the workflow run ID, you'll need the API key, you'll also need the task ID. And then we're just running an API call here just to make sure that the task is updated to not completed instead of completed. And that's basically it. So let me quickly show you how you can look for your field ID as well as your task ID if you're not familiar with this. So for your field ID, you're just going to right click on your browser, click on inspect, and then you're going to switch to the network tab, look for widget, give this a quick refresh. All right, and you should see the widget file here. Click on that. click on response, and then you'll see all your form fields here. So let's just pick one of it. So let's have a look at the subtask, for example. So this one here is the subtask A. So I'm just going to quickly expand that object. I'm going to expand the header object, and you'll see there's a group object here with the ID. So this is going to be the field ID for my subtask. So here, if you see subtask, I have the matching field ID. And you're basically just going to do the same for the rest of them, and you're just going to fill them all up here. Whereas for the task ID, it's a lot simpler. You just need to click on the task that you want to update, have a look at the URL. So if you have a look at the URL here, the task ID is going to be the one at the back. So you can see GY8U, that's going to be your task ID that you're going to update. All right, that's basically it. Let us know if you have any questions at all. Thank you.
Awesome. All right. A couple things here. First off, if you're interested in trying out Code Tasks, you want to get access to it to try it out for free, go ahead, and there's a couple options here. So AI tasks are live on all plans. You can start using those immediately. So start messing around with those for now. Code tasks, being brand new, are available on the enterprise plans or as an add-on. You can get access. You can try them out completely for free. We'll work with you in terms of helping to set things up or trying to work through things. Additionally, we're likely to set up some office hours, likely with me, maybe with Kai, maybe with others on the team, to help you to think through some code tasks, think through how to use them, and those sorts of things. We'll reach out about that. Things you can email either your CSM if you have one, or email support@process.st. Just write it in our chat in the app, or email support@process.st, and we'll make sure that we get you that access. And where we can get you some one-on-one help with getting things built. We're also we have a webinar coming up next month on compliance. So we're doing some really cool stuff with basically updating Process Street to be able to do some really awesome compliance things in terms of version control, revision history, document management, checking stuff against compliance as well. Let's go ahead and get into some questions. Yeah, okay, so that's a good question there, Aaron. Really quick there. Is this something that could be helpful for law firms? Absolutely. I really can't think of any sort of industry, any sort of use case where this wouldn't be helpful. But examples with law firms, right? Obviously, there's lots of different systems that you guys are using. And so to be able to integrate and have your data move seamlessly between those systems and Process Street, that's something that Code Tasks can do. AI tasks can actually do things like analyze, for example, maybe it's a client request, or maybe it's you're analyzing some files or something along those lines. You could use it for that, or to pull out data as well. You guys are obviously very often working through lots and lots of different documents that you are requesting from clients that you're doing in terms of your discovery. And and then obviously for doing any sort of analysis, scoring, and then again, integrating with any of the other tools that you guys use, that's definitely something you could do there. Additionally, real estate agents, absolutely. Yeah. So, a lot of our bigger users here are in real estate and property management. Connecting to whatever tools it is that you might be using, AppFolio, et cetera, that you would like to connect things with Process Street, that's definitely a place where you could use Code Tasks. In terms of AI tasks, again, just analyzing anything really and extracting data from it. I have a workflow that is automated where once the final task is completed, it automatically triggers a new workflow and passes data from the previous run to the next. However, this new workflow is always triggered immediately after the completion check. Is there a way using Code Tasks to delay the execution of the next workflow? So a couple things there. It depends on when it is that you're trying to have it, run. You can build some delays into Code Tasks, but realistically, because of that 5-second limit, it's going to obviously be relatively limited on that. There's lots of different ways that you could do it, of course, using other sorts of tools in terms of building in that delay. But something I might recommend is having it run, but then not having the task due that you actually need to do until whatever it is, basically at the end of that delay. And then that way, yeah, you're assigned to it, but realistically, it's not going to pop up and remind you to do things until that due date. And of course, you could use Code Tasks to calculate what that date should be. Would Process Street now be able to replace other customer support ticket systems? It's funny. GD on our team said no, but I would actually say yes. In many ways, I would say yes that you could. Obviously, we integrate really well with lots of different ticketing systems. We use Intercom. Plenty of people use all different sorts of things, right? But you could. There are people who use just Process Street itself to handle support tickets, and so if you're trying to cut down on your bills, you're trying to figure out how to how to prioritize, you absolutely could. So an idea there is that basically you may have a support email address, and whenever that gets emailed, it runs a workflow automatically using that, as you saw earlier, the run a workflow via email feature. And from there, obviously it could pull in the body of that email, which would be the support ticket, and of course, who sent it. And then, of course, assign who it is that needs to be assigned. You could even use a code task to do things like round robin, right? So maybe you've got 5 people and you wanted to kind of, go through and pick who should be the right person. Maybe you have a data set as to how many tickets somebody is actively working on, and that you could actually update that data set, for example, with, hey, there's another ticket that's assigned to them. And then basically pull that data into a code task, look at that information, figure out who doesn't have a ticket assigned, or maybe there's some other piece of information that's relevant, like time zone or specialty. Maybe is this use an AI task to figure out, is this a more technical question? Is this a billing question? Whatever it might be. And then based off of that, maybe do some routing using a code task. Use conditional logic to figure out what are the appropriate responses, and then automatically have, for example, the AI task to generate that response based off of what the pathway is. And then, from there, have the person go ahead and use the send email widget to send that email back to respond to the ticket. And that would give you full tracking over, basically how many tickets are being responded to, what's the response time, all those sorts of things using our analytics. So that's an example of a way that you could replace your ticketing system with Process Street using some of these features. Next question here, will code tasks do date math rather, as in add this many days to a date that is defined? Yeah, absolutely. So you could definitely do that. Pretty straightforward, to be honest. You just pull that in as an input field, that being the initial date, and then adding an X number of days to it. You could even say, add basically add this many days until the next business day, right? So if it's adding this many days and it's a Sunday, it can go ahead and add to it. Something I can mention on there as well is that you can also use the some of the features that are already built into Process Street. I mean, this is obviously built into it as well, but before code tasks, that is, inside of the dynamic due date field, that can actually automatically do things like, say, make something due on the next business day, right? So that's something interesting that you could already do. You don't have to necessarily use code tasks for, but of course, since you can pass variables into dynamic due dates, you could set that up however it is that you want, right? In terms of what that might be. Maybe if it's you do a quarterly meeting with your client, right? And, so whatever this date is, we want to find the next quarterly date, so 3 months from that date, figure out what day that is. Maybe you do an API call to do that, and to make sure, maybe, for example, it's not a holiday. And then from there, adjust it as needed. And then it outputs the final date that you then use for the dynamic due date assignment. We use Zapier to grab employee information from Bamboo HR. Could code tasks replace Zapier, or is that too complex of an API call? That is absolutely not too complex of an API call. You can do that. So you can definitely pull data in from there. Pulling data in from Jira Service Management, like you saw me do earlier, is actually, to be honest, even more complex than pretty much any other system you're going to deal with. Not every system. There's definitely more complex ones, but that's more complex than, for example, Bamboo HR. And so you definitely could be pulling data in from there. And that way you wouldn't have to use Zapier to get that done. And of course, that would reduce your bill overall. I have a workflow where once the final task is completed, it triggers multiple new workflows, number defined in the final task. Currently I'm using Zapier to loop create all the workflows. Yeah, Yeah, absolutely. That would be a great use for this. So a great thing you can do with code tasks is looping, because obviously code does that really well. That's a for loop, right? It's going to go back through over and over and over. And since Process Street itself has an API, that means that you could set that up to pull data in from your, the initial workflow that you're working through, and then have it loop through, say we need to run, 5, 6, 7, whatever the number is, numbers of workflows. It can basically just keep looping and making those calls and passing that data through the API to run those workflows as you need and be very flexible about it. So definitely a great use case there for you to consider. One thing I do mention, yeah, that Kai mentioned in there as well, is just that as long as it doesn't loop for longer than 5 seconds, you'll be good to go. One thing there is definitely that it actually can typically, especially for something like the Process Street API, it can do that pretty quick. So you probably can get through a ton of those being run without you having to, without you hitting that limit. And by the way, if you ever build this and you're hitting that limit, very simple thing to set up in terms of a solution to that. Just break up your code task. Just break it up into a couple code tasks, and that way, each one is 5 seconds. But obviously, again, if you're hitting that, that's a way to get around it. Pretty straightforward. Something that we can definitely help you with as well. Filtering example, how are the tables in Process Street synced with the live data set customers or products? Yeah, so that's back from my example there. Again, what that did is it is a basically at runtime or live sync that I have happening. The way that it works, and it can be bi-directional, by the way. In the example, it was just unidirectional, right? It was just Jira Service Management to Process Street. It didn't go the other way, but it could. It definitely could. But basically, what happens there is that you're basically just using an API call to pull data from some sort of resource. In the example I gave is Jira Service Management, but it could be any other sort of database that you have, whether that be Amazon or, again, Airtable, HubSpot, Bamboo HR, whatever it might be, Salesforce, right? It can pull those records via an API call. You can filter and parse those records, right? I only want ones that fit this particular criteria, and that can all be within the same code task. And then again, in that very same one, it's also then pulling the Process Street data set, because again, we also have an API. It's pulling that. It's then using a field to basically cross-reference the two. And then based off of that, it's looping to then go through all those records and then update the ones that are relevant. So if you have 3 or you have 30 assets in that database, it doesn't matter. It'll still process it just the same, right? So definitely something that you can do there to, again, just keep your data synced in a very seamless way as you need it without paying an additional anything to an ETL or to some other sort of system.
Yeah, Blake,
All right.
I was gonna say your demo probably should have been right before mine, because ours can work together. I was talking about syncing an external source, but I didn't show how to do it. So
Well, cool. Yeah, I'm glad that I was able to show that. Again, that was one of our customers who asked for that directly and was able to to kind of show that off. Another one here from Paul. So how easy to sync data from SQL Azure and Excel? Pretty straightforward. SQL Azure would be pretty straightforward. Excel would also be straightforward as long as you have that either in the cloud, so Office 365, or you have some sort of way that it's being synced with Office 365. If you have it, for example, locally, have that file locally, that is. So obviously local documents that don't have any sort of connectivity outward, into, that can't be accessed via an API or similar, or don't have some sort of native syncing functionality with, a cloud document. That's where you'll run into some issues. Isn't necessarily impossible. It just becomes a lot harder. But as long as whatever you're dealing with, whatever system you're dealing with has an API and or has some sort of cloud functionality, then you very likely can use Process Street to sync that with your Process Street data set using a code task. Could a code task or AI task hide tasks that have a certain variable set? I have a checklist with tasks that have a priority field, high, medium, low. So I'd want to only show those tasks that are high, medium, or low, depending on what I want to work with. Would either of those be able to do this? I've not been able to do that with conditional logic. Maybe I'm missing something. Yeah, in theory, I think as Kai kind of mentioned here as well, it is something that you likely should be able just to do with conditional logic. So obviously it'd be something we'd want to look at into why that didn't work in the first place. However, adding in code tasks with that would definitely make it easier for you, right? So as you're going through there, you can basically pull in multiple fields for multiple tasks and process that data and provide one output and then use that in conditional logic. So that's an option that you could do there. Another thing that you could do, of course, is you could use AI tasks. So if there's some sort of logic that you would explain to a person, say, for example, you're going on vacation and you're like, hey, if you're going to be running this while I'm gone, this is how you would figure out which priority this is. If you can explain that to somebody in, a relatively short conversation, then you can explain that to an AI task and have it do that prioritization for you, right? And that goes for anything, right? So anything that you could just have a conversation with a person and explain it to them and they'll get it, again, just like a paragraph or two, that kind of a thing, then there's a very good chance that you could put that into an AI task, have it do that categorization, that scoring, that whatever else for you, and then of course put that directly into your conditional logic to then handle the next steps. And if there's any other sort of stuff that needs to be done that maybe is a little bit more advanced, that's where you could throw in a code task as well. Can code tasks be used to create a Word document from a template, save it in a appropriate location in SharePoint, and then insert text into the Word document? So on that one, a couple things there. First off, I do believe Office 365 has the concept of templates. But if not, to be honest, the way that I tend to handle this is I actually tend to use, and I promise this will still give you the same output, but I tend to use Google for this, right? Google Docs. So Google Docs has what's called Google Doc templates. We have a help article on this concept. And so basically, what you could do is you can build a templated document where it's got variables in it. Again, I believe Word can do this as well. I may be wrong there. Honestly, Word and Office 365 tends to be a little bit behind in terms of this sorts of stuff versus, say, Google or other sorts of groups. So I have to look into it. But either way, the way that I've done it before is I'll do it that way with, it creates that document. It basically can automatically, push an API call to that template, creates a copy of that document that pushes in the variables, and then that way you have a final document, and then that actually creates you can actually ask it to then create automatically an export link for the Word doc file. Okay, and so that way you actually do still get a Word doc out of it. But it just, handles it all a little bit nicer through the cloud. And then that way you could actually pull that document right back into your process, right? And this can all be done via API calls to Google Docs, gives you the link. So generates it, gives you the link, and maybe even the file. Pull that in to Process Street, and then there you go. It's right there, ready to go inside of that same workflow. And then you have a fully completed personalized document, custom document in this case, based off of the template as right there as you need it, right where you need it, pretty much instantly, and for basically no additional cost. So pretty awesome things you could do there. As well, Leanne here says, we've been looking at using an app called Asana, which seems to be a simpler version of what Process Street is doing. So schedule a meeting with you. Have you heard of Asana? For sure. Yeah. I mean, honestly, we've used Asana in the past. Well, I'll tell you this is, a lot of our customers actually come from Asana. A lot of people will use Asana. It's fine, I will say, for just straight project management, and from that, if you're just doing things where it's never repeating, there's no sort of it's very just direct like that. then it's fine. It'll handle that well. Lots of teams use it for those sorts of things. Honestly, some teams will use Process Street and Asana, and you can integrate the two. However, if you are in a business where what you're doing, specifically what you're trying to deliver, is of really, really high value, and you're repeating it, and it's going to happen, in some way over, more than once, then you definitely want to consider Process Street over Asana in that particular case, just because, it honestly, and I don't want to talk bad about them, so I'm not, but realistically, in terms of looking at that repetitive elements of things and sort of just how that works from a process management standpoint and the types of value and types of things you're able to set up, you're going to get a lot better value from Process Street in that regard. So you can integrate the two, but let's definitely talk and figure out what's the right solution for you. So glad that you reached out. Awesome. Still, again, if you're interested in trying out Code Tasks, you'd like to get access and you'd like to try it out, and you'd like to potentially even meet with us to kind of help you through this immediately, again, you can always email us as well. But thank you for joining.
Yeah, thanks everyone. It's great to be here.
Great to have you here, Kai.
Yes, seriously.
Yeah, this was fun.
All right. Well, with that, thank you, everybody. I really, really appreciate you guys signing up and attending today's webinar. If you're watching this as a recording, I appreciate you just watching this as a recording. That's fine too. Again, thank you so much. Please take care and tune in next month for our next webinar.